genitas, meam medet rudit simplicitas.
Hi, I'm Chris,
And I am Elam.
and this is
Infobores,
the show where we bore you with information.
Information is a fine thing. I recommend you consume at least 12 ounces every day.
Well, because you can then be informed.
And also, it will form your N.
You know, that is a kind of an interesting word, isn't it, Elam? Inform.
Not really.
Yes,
but
it
go
is.
for
Well, I mean, you have a preposition in, and you have form, which could be a noun. In form, like in.
Or it could be like you're forming something inside you or something like that.
You know, I suspect we could actually find out the etymology of the word if we wanted to.
What a fascinating subject for the episode.
Not really, but it's a start, isn't it? Because this is Infobores. Well, apparently it has its roots in Latin.
The most uninteresting of the languages.
No. The most one of the longest used languages, in fact. I mean, you know, you think about Jerome translating the Bible into Latin, and then it became the Bible of the Church, the Vulgate edition, up until even the present. In fact, I believe the Pope and the Vatican State's official language is Latin. Anyways, so I think they would be very much unhappy with you saying it's the most boring of all languages. But let's see. Latin, it's got a preposition in. Big surprise. Guess what that means? I think that means into. And forma. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly because I never studied Latin. Forma, but a form. And so it became informorari? I don't know how you pronounce that. Do you have any idea how to pronounce that?
No.
Okay, but it means shape or fashion or describe. And then an old French word. Go ahead and say it. You took French. You should know this.
Informer.
Informer. That was really good. Thank you for that. Okay, to the Middle English, which was inform, E-N-F-O-R-M-E.
I think they actually pronounce the E's at the end of the words.
Really?
Yeah, I remember I was listening to a recording of someone reading Chaucer, and it was like, informe.
Informe. So they'd add that. Oh, that was interesting. So did you listen to the whole Chaucer Canterbury Tales and all that?
I don't think anyone has ever recorded the entirety of the Canterbury Tales in the original English. Because it has its own pronunciations and everything.
That would be something for you to do.
No.
Doing those projects. Okay, which then became inform with an I instead of an E. But I wonder if they pronounce that informe or informe, which became our word inform. Okay, so let's see. To form the mind of, or to teach. So to shape, to fashion, describe. So now if we're infobores,
we're here to bore into your mind and change your mind shape, your brain's physiology into the likeness we so choose.
Well, you know, that wasn't how I was understanding the word bore as we were using it. I was thinking more of the classic, like, wow, I'm just like dulled in my senses. And
Listener, I bring a shovel to each recording.
What?
Yeah.
Why? Okay, anyways. So my idea was, as we form your mind, we're boring you, we're dulling you, we're actually causing you to fall into a stupor as we fill you with useless data.
So instead of listening to your white noise playlist on YouTube, we recommend you put on an episode of Infobores, preferably with advertisements on.
Absolutely, yes. Please listen to Infobores with advertisements and tell your friends so that we can start making that filthy lucre. Anyhow, the topic today is not actually the word inform or infobores or anything like that, is it?
The topic today is the topic of future episodes. We're essentially testing them out here because we were trying to brainstorm them previously, and I had a disagreement with my father here about what we should talk about. And we thought, we're disagreeing. Perfect opportunity for content.
Absolutely, because how much more can we bore you than talking about how we're going to bore you? Okay, so I asked Elam this morning, I said, Elam, can you give me some broad subject matter or topics that we can talk about on Infobores?
I said, I think a broad topic is boring.
And so you suggested, as your initial suggestion...
Well, I've been wanting to do an episode on the song The Electrician by the Walker Brothers for a while, because it's a song I really love and that you really hate. In addition, I want to talk about orchestration and rock music more broadly, because it's very interesting, that sort of melding of what is considered to be lower with high art. However, you chose too specific a topic.
Well, for brainstorming, which I was trying to do, I was thinking we should be more broad, like, maybe music or pop music or rock music if we're going to talk about music.
Man, we're going to talk about music for one episode. We'll be out of material in like 3 weeks.
No. The idea was we start with the broad topics and brainstorming, and then we branch out. Have you ever seen one of those mind maps?
I think, first of all, I think mind maps are a weird thing, because I once mapped my mind, ended up being one of those Escher paintings.
I'm surprised it didn't look more like a Pollock painting. But yeah, I'm sure that if you mapped your mind, it would be somewhat that. The mind map is this formal kind of thinker toy that we're supposed to use to foster creativity so that we can be more creative in our episodes and less like this.
Well, I think creativity, it's a great thing. What you do is you just go outside, breathe the air, think about things, and then live your life. What I think is the opposite of creativity is being in a sterile factory, sort of mixing together chemicals saying, ooh, will this produce a creative outcome?
Yeah, that's not mind mapping. Mind mapping is when you take a beautiful whiteboard or something like that that's empty and you say, what do I want to put on a page? And you say, I'm going to take this topic, and you put there, and then you start branching off, and you make cool little drawings that look like spiders and ladders and things. And
see, spiders and ladders are more interesting. We could talk about spiders and ladders.
Let me write that down. Spiders and ladders. Ladders might be, actually, that reminds me, not to go off on the tangent, but that reminds me of the Santa Claus movie. Remember that?
The Santa Claus movie?
Yeah, remember Rose Such a the Ladder Company. The very first one.
No, I mean, which Santa Claus movie?
The one with Tim Allen.
Oh, you mean the Santa Claus?
The Santa Claus movie, yeah. At the very beginning, it was a row, such a ladder, and it was a ladder that was on the side of the... Okay, anyway, so yeah, spiders and ladders. So entomology might be a fascinating thing.
Well, on ladders, I was thinking about the board game. I don't know if you remember this little
yes,
number.
I do.
Shoots
and ladders. Yeah.
Well,
that was fun.
I've been thinking about Shoots and Ladders. It's very interesting in terms of what its messaging is to its child players. Because what it essentially presents is two options to the player. Because everything apart from the shoot and the ladder is very bland and uninteresting. It's just furthering.
You're
the
right. That's
destination.
just. I can't remember. Do you spend the die or you roll the dice? I can't remember.
Let's say you roll the dice.
But then you just move forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You want to land
whatever.
on the ladder because it moves you closer to the goal, and thus the winning.
Yeah, they're always up.
The disposal of your enemies via victory. However, the shoot, as in the slide, is presented as a negative outcome because it moves you backwards. Now, here's the thing that's interesting about that. In day-to-day life of a child, you're going to be interested in the slides, right? When you go to a playground, you only climb up a ladder, for instance.
Yeah, let's be honest.
So
you're absolutely right. The shoot, the slide is the fun part of the whole playground part.
So why,
especially if it's curved and does weird stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So why is this game for children, presenting ladders as good and slides as bad? I would argue that it is, from a very early age, instilling within children's minds a cult of productivity, where it's saying what is productive is what is good, and what is unproductive is what is evil and detrimental to
that
you.
is interesting, because, I mean, from a weird standpoint, the fun thing is the thing that sets you back, and it puts you even all the way back to the very best one. I always remember the very best one, which always made you happy to see your enemy fall on it, was the one that starts at the very top, if I remember right, and goes all the way down to the bottom. You're like, yeah, wee!
And you can just picture a traumatized child after that going to a playground and saying, no, I will not touch a single one of these slides. I will instead go pick up a book of Aristotle, at which point they will read Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics and become a valuable member of their society. I think that's just sickening.
And mock the kid who's reading Harry Potter or something. Yeah. You're just saying they're having fun, but I'm learning.
Exactly. I think this is the sort of evil behavior that our board games are instilling in children. Take Candyland, for example.
Okay, wait. Go back to Shoots and Ladders for a minute.
Yeah.
One of the things that's hard about that is I have always been the kid on the slide going all the way from the top to bottom and going, wee, I'm having fun. And but I see all these other people climbing these ladders, and they all seem to be doing very well. And I hate to admit it, on occasion I've gotten a little jealous of watching them, and wondering what's going on here. They're not enjoying the shoots, but they're climbing the ladders. Why?
And what's even more peculiar is that in the game Shoots and Ladders, it presents the slides as being a one-way option, when any kid knows that you can actually climb up the slide and have a lot more fun that way.
It's true. And block the people who are coming down and cause all kinds. You know what? This actually brings together that whole Zen thing, too. Because have you ever gone to the end of the game and you're all having fun, you're playing the game, and you're doing the shoots, and you're doing the ladders, and then you get to the end, and it's like, yeah, you won.
Yeah, it's one of the peculiar games where the optimal outcome is that the game actually never ends and you stay in childhood forever.
But isn't that true? I mean, not to be weird, but isn't that true of almost all games? Because we spend, because I know, well, like puzzles too. We've been doing these jigsaw puzzles, and you work on them, then they put in that final piece, and you look at it and you say, wow, this looks great. And then they're like, okay, let's break it up.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of games' pleasure, the pleasure of any game really is going to come from the moment-to-moment gameplay of it. If it was pleasurable for the game to end, assumably it would just be optimized so as to be finishable as fast as possible. But that's obviously not the case with something like Monopoly. The benefit you get from purchasing a game is from the gameplay, not from the stats of victory.
Do you think it's, I mean, not to be morbid, but this is almost a statement on life. The other day, I got a sad email that a friend of mine, her father-in-law, passed away. Okay? And, do you know, my first thought wasn't, well, what had he done and what was his whole obituary going to be? It's that, wow, you know, he's lived this life, but now it's kind of over. For him, it wasn't the end accomplishment, the writing of a great obituary that is like the end goal, I assume. I mean, in this mortal life. I'm not talking, of course, about Christian afterlife. I'm talking just about what we pursue in this life. To think, oh, I'm going to win.
And additionally, it's interesting you mention that because the longer you live, the more likely your obituary is going to suck. Because you have more chances to mess up at that point. If you die at like the age of 15, that's pretty optimal, you know. Your obituary...
I don't know if I agree on that.
Think about this. Your obituary, if you die at the age of 15, maybe by a tragic accident where you try to save a 9-year-old from a burning house fire, your obituary, spotless, clean, perfect. The New York Times
but there's very little to put in there.
The New York Times don't have a single negative thing to say. But if you make it to the age of 30, at that point you might have a few controversies behind you. You might have a few friendships you burnt down. You might have a few. I mean,
well, you don't want those in your obituary, man.
Exactly. And the longer you live, by the age of 70, it's almost guaranteed you'll have a paragraph about some awful thing you did in that. You know, you don't want to make it there if you want a spotless obituary.
Okay, the sweet spot on obituary seems to be having. And since I'm getting older now, I'm reading obituaries, it seems. That 70 to 75 range is like the optimal, you've lived a long enough life that there's a lot to write, but you're not so old that nobody is alive people are still alive who care about you. But I've noticed, like, when you get to these 90s and 100 years old, it's just sort of like, well, there might be a celebration of life at some point. We'll let you know. Whereas...
I disagree entirely. I think it's a curve where if you make it to 80 around, people stop caring. But once you get to like 100...
Oh, because then you're a freak of nature.
Exactly. But also, people want to be you, especially if you're like still walking around doing stuff. Like, take Bob Dylan, for instance. If he makes it to 100 and is still touring and stuff, he's going to be an icon for the ages.
If he's still touring, well...
He's touring right now, and he's
I couldn't understand what he was saying 20, 30 years ago. Do you think anybody's going to understand what he's singing or saying in his 90s?
Let me tell you, man. He actually released one of his finest albums, maybe his finest since, I don't know, maybe it's one of his, I'm kind of split. He actually has had a very consistent career. I was going to say his best since the 70s, but he's had some gems throughout, but he dropped this sorry, I'm forgetting the album. I'm blinking. The title of the album. But he drops this album, and it was really amazing. Okay. Like, he had this 10-minute epic about the JFK assassination and the reverberations from it. He's still putting out necessary stuff, Don't count him out.
Okay, maybe at 90, 95.
Neil Young released an album last year called Barn, and it had all the Crazy Horse people on it, and they were jamming and making music together, and it's a good time. Check it out. Listener, I recommend you check out Barn by Neil Young.
Okay, going back, didn't you say something about Candyland?
Oh, yeah, Candyland.
I like the whole idea of Candyland, by the way. When I was a kid, Candyland was like, when I was a little kid, Candyland was one of my favorite games.
Well, I think Candyland is a more sophisticated case